What if I told you that a single decision on draft night could define the future of the Miami Dolphins for the next 5 years, and maybe nobody realized it at the time? What if behind that discrete change from the 11th to the 12th pick, there was a chain reaction that could either build a dominant powerhouse in Miami or become one of the biggest what ifs this franchise has ever seen? Because the truth is, it's not just about Kaden Proctor. It's not just about letting another prospect slip by. It's about identity, philosophy, and a front office that made a bold bet that could change everything we think we know about this team. And believe me, what I'm about to reveal will make you see that draft in a completely different way. But before we go any further, don't forget to like this post right now if you truly believe in the future of the Dolphins. And I want to see how strong your optimism is. Go to the comments and write, "I believe in this team." Come on, Dolphins. Now get ready, because the details behind this change are even more surprising than you imagine.ve. And if you can, drop a comment saying, "Go Dolphins! Fins up!" Now let's get straight into it. The biggest talking point right now is Kaden Proctor. The Dolphins made a bold move on draft night, trading back from pick 11 to 12 with the Dallas Cowboys and still selecting Proctor in the first round. At first glance, it may not seem like a massive shift, but the implications are huge. According to inside intel shared during draft night, Proctor was not necessarily the top player on Miami's board at that moment. He was among the top prospects, yes, but not the definitive choice. That alone raises eyebrows. An SEC coordinator described Proctor as a player with more potential than production. That's a statement that should both excite and concern you as a fan. On one hand, you're getting a physically gifted offensive lineman with rare size and athleticism. On the other, there are legitimate questions about consistency and dominance during his college career. The kind of player that looks incredible in workouts, the kind that makes scouts say we can't pass on this guy, but hasn't fully put it all together yet. And that seems to be exactly what happened here. John Eric Sullivan and the Dolphins front office saw the upside and couldn't resist. They bet on traits. They bet on ceiling. And in today's NFL, that's a risky but sometimes necessary gamble, especially when you consider the team's clear need to rebuild and strengthen the offensive line. Here's where things get even more interesting. Proctor is expected to start immediately at left guard, lining up next to Patrick Paul. That alone tells you how much confidence the coaching staff has in him. But it doesn't stop there. He's also being cross-trained at right tackle, which opens the door for flexibility, especially if injuries hit the line. If Austin Jackson misses time, don't be surprised if Proctor shifts outside almost immediately. Now think about the bigger picture. This offensive line suddenly has serious potential. We're talking about a unit with an average weight of over 325 pounds. That's not just size, that's identity. The Dolphins are clearly shifting toward a more physical, run-heavy approach. The plan is to dominate in the trenches, establish the run game, and then build everything else off play action. It's a system inspired by the Kyle Shanahan philosophy, and if it clicks, it could completely reshape this offense. But here's the catch. Everything depends on development. If Proctor lives up to his potential, if Patrick Paul continues to rise, if Aaron Brewer maintains elite form, and if the rest of the line holds together, this could realistically become a top 10 offensive line in the NFL. And if that happens, it takes a lot of pressure off quarterback Malik Willis, who is stepping into a situation with questions at wide receiver. Now imagine the alternative. If Proctor struggles, if the concerns about conditioning or effort resurface, if the line fails to gel, then this entire offensive vision could collapse. Because this isn't a pass-first team anymore. This is a team that's betting on physical dominance up front. And that's why this pick is so polarizing. Because the Dolphins didn't just draft a player, they committed to an identity. And we haven't even talked about the draft night drama. The Cowboys initially tried to jump Miami and the Giants to secure their target. They even attempted a trade with Cleveland for the 9th pick, offering multiple assets, but got rejected. That failure set off a chain reaction that ultimately led Dallas to negotiate with Miami instead. At first, they offered just one 5th-round pick to move up. Sullivan said no. He held his ground. And with less than a minute left on the clock, Dallas came back with a better offer, 2 5th-round picks. Deal done. That patience turned one move into multiple assets, which later became players like Sada Trior and Kevin Coleman Jr. So now the real question becomes even more complex. Did the Dolphins essentially trade a higher-rated prospect like Caleb Downs for Kaden Proctor plus additional depth pieces? And if so, was it worth it? Because this is the kind of decision that won't be judged today, or tomorrow, but years down the line. Now here's where the story takes another turn, because what happened after that trade says just as much about the Dolphins' strategy as the pick itself. When you look at the full picture, Miami didn't just move down one spot and grab Kaden Proctor. They turned that single decision into multiple assets, and that's something John Eric Sullivan clearly values. Those extra fifth-round picks became part of a broader plan to add depth, specifically targeting players like Kevin Coleman Jr. and Sadu Trior. And this is where things start to get really interesting for the future of this roster. Because now, instead of evaluating this as a one-player decision, you have to judge it as a package deal. Caleb Downs versus Kaden Proctor, Kevin Coleman Jr., and Sadu Trior. That's the real comparison. And internally, there's a belief that this kind of roster-building approach gives the Miami Dolphins more flexibility long-term. It's not just about landing stars, it's about building a complete team that can sustain success. But let's be honest here, Dolphins fans don't just want depth, they want difference makers. That's why the pressure on Proctor is going to be immediate and intense. Now let's talk about something that hasn't gone unnoticed, the concerns around his consistency and conditioning. During his time at Alabama, there were moments where he didn't dominate the way you'd expect from someone with his physical tools. That's a red flag for some scouts. The word lazy has even been thrown around in certain evaluations, and that's something that follows a player into the league whether it's fair or not. But here's the flip side. Since being drafted, everything coming out of Proctor's camp suggests a player who understands the expectations. He's openly talked about wanting to reach all-pro level and even make the Hall of Fame. That's not small talk. That's a mindset shift. And if he backs that up with discipline and work ethic, then Miami might have landed one of the biggest steals of the draft. Because physically, this guy is rare. We're talking about a massive lineman with surprising mobility, someone who can anchor the interior or slide outside when needed. Pairing him with Patrick Paul creates one of the most physically imposing duos on the offensive line. Together, they bring size, length, and power that fits perfectly into the Dolphins' new offensive identity. And that identity is becoming very clear. Run the football. Control the line of scrimmage. Wear defenses down. Then strike with play action. This system could unlock everything from Malik Willis. Because let's not ignore the reality here. The passing game still has question marks. The receiving core lacks proven reliability, even though there's speed with players like Caleb Douglas, Tutu Atwell, and Chris Bell. There's potential there, but not certainty. So the offensive line has to carry more weight, literally and figuratively. And that brings us back to Proctor. If he becomes a solid rookie, not even elite, just solid, this offense could surprise a lot of people. We're talking about a unit that could climb into the top 10 if everything clicks. But if he struggles, if the line underperforms, then suddenly the Dolphins are looking at one of the lowest floors in the league. That's the risk. Now let's not forget another key moment from draft night that tells you how sharp Sullivan was operating. The Cowboys initially tried to lowball Miami with just one fifth-round pick to move up. Sullivan didn't hesitate. He shut it down immediately. No panic, no rush. And that patience paid off when Dallas came back with a better offer just before the clock expired. That's calculated decision-making. And it didn't stop there. Later in the first round, Miami made another aggressive move, trading up to secure Chris Johnson at pick 27. There were strong indications that other teams, including the Buffalo Bills, were eyeing him, and the Dolphins made sure they didn't miss out. That shows awareness. That shows preparation. Sullivan knew where his targets would go and acted accordingly. So now you're starting to see a pattern. This front office isn't just reacting, they're anticipating. But anticipation only matters if the players deliver. Because years from now, nobody is going to remember how smart the trade looked on paper. They're going to look at results. Did Proctor become a cornerstone? Did Coleman Jr. contribute? Did Trior develop? And most importantly, did the Dolphins get closer to a Super Bowl? That's the standard. That's always been the standard in Miami. And this is exactly where things start to get even more intense, because inside the building, the expectations for this entire draft class are already sky high. You don't make moves like this, trading down, stacking picks, betting on upside, unless you truly believe you're building something bigger than just one season. And that's the message coming out of the Miami Dolphins right now. This isn't